If you feel like you can't focus anymore, it's not your imagination. It's because of something researchers call attention residue. And once you understand it, the fix becomes obvious. I'm a behavior analyst. I spend all of my time looking at patterns in behavior. So, in this video, I'm going to break down what attention residue actually is, why the real problem isn't your attention, but your fragmented work, and the exact 3-step system I use to fix it. So let's start with what the research tells us about this. So, I'm not just making this stuff up. Dr. Gloria Mark is a professor at UC Irvine, and she's been studying attention for nearly 20 years. She tracks how long real people actually focus on a screen before they switch to something else. Back in 2004, the average was about 2.5 minutes. By 2012, it had dropped to 75 seconds, and her most recent measurements put it at 47 seconds. So attention really is shrinking. That part is true. And most people, when they hear that number, assume the cause is obvious. I mean, TikTok and Reels, we have shorter and shorter videos training us to need a new hit of dopamine every few seconds. That's the story we've all bought into with our attention. And it's not entirely wrong. Those things do play an important role. But here's the part of Marx's research that I think is way more interesting and honestly, way more useful for us. When her team tracked office workers, they found that the majority of those switches, about 80%, weren't caused by a notification or an interruption from someone else. They actually came from the person themselves. Nobody interrupted them, nobody walked up to their desk, they just switched tasks. Now, I don't think most of us are consciously deciding to abandon what we're working on. That's not what's happening. What's happening is that we've been taught for years now that being successful means being responsive, being available, being able to juggle a lot at once. Multitasking has been sold to us as a skill, as a sign that you're capable and valuable. And so we've built that into how we work without really thinking about it. The switching isn't a conscious choice, it's a habit that the environment has trained into us. This is where attention residue comes in. The term was coined by a researcher named Dr. Sophie Leroy back in 2009. And once you understand what she found, the reason you feel like you can't focus starts to make more sense. When you stop working on one thing and switch to another, part of your brain stays behind. Even though you've physically moved on, maybe you've closed a tab on your web browser or you've opened a new document, maybe you're even sitting in a new meeting, a portion of your mental activity is still processing the thing that you just left. You're working on the new task with less of your brain available because the rest of it is still finishing up the previous one. And the effect is strongest when the thing that you just left was unfinished. There's actually older research going all the way back to 1927 that shows the same thing from a slightly different angle. It's called the Zeigarnik effect. And the idea is simple. Your brain holds on to unfinished tasks more than completed ones. It keeps them active in the background, waiting for you to come back to them and close them out. I actually did a whole video on how to close these open loops at the end of the day. I'll link to that here if you want to go deeper on that. It actually gives us a really simple way to be able to disconnect from work at the end of the day. So put all of this together, and here's what's actually happening to you during the day. You start a task, something pulls your attention, maybe an email, or you have a thought about something, or just a habit you didn't even know that you had. You switch to that task, but part of your brain is still back on the first task. A few minutes later, you switch again. Now part of your brain is on task one, part on task two, and you're trying to work on task three. And this keeps happening over and over all day long. By 3 in the afternoon, when you're sitting down to try to focus on something important, you're not working with a full brain. You're working with whatever's left after a dozen unfinished things have taken their share. That's what you're feeling when you say you can't focus anymore. It's not that your attention span is broken. It's that your attention is divided across all the piles of things that you never actually closed out. So the fix isn't about trying harder to focus. You have to change the structure of your day so you stop leaving pieces of your attention behind. That's what I want to walk you through next. It's a 3-step system I call clear, cut, close. Each step is tied directly to the research we just talked about, and together they give you a full day where your attention stays where you put it. So let's start with clear. Clear is what you do before the day even starts. The whole point is to make sure that you sit down with a clear picture of what actually matters today, so your attention has somewhere specific to go. The first thing is to choose today's priorities. Just the 2 or 3 things that, if you got them done, would make today a good day. When everything feels equally important, your attention ends up splitting itself across all of it. Naming the real priorities is how you stop that from happening. The second thing is to put your focused work on the calendar. Most people will block out meetings, appointments, and everything that someone else is asking of them. But leaving your own deep work floating and hoping that you'll get to it between everything else is probably not working very well for you. You have to treat your focused work the same way you treat a meeting. Put it on the calendar, give it a specific time, protect it like you'd protect anything else that matters. And the third thing is to protect that time you blocked for focused work. Silence your notifications during those windows. Close the tabs you don't need open. If you work with other people, let them know when you're unavailable. Gloria Mark, the researcher we talked about earlier, actually recommends that companies build in protected quiet time, hours where nobody is expected to respond to anything. You probably can't change your whole company, but you can create that window for yourself. When you do this step well, you sit down already knowing what matters most with the time set aside to actually do it. The problem is that no plan, no matter how good, survives the actual day. Something always comes up, and that's where the next step in the system comes in. Cut. Because no matter how good your morning plan is, something is going to happen that derails your good intentions. It could be an urgent email, a coworker with a question, or a meeting you didn't see coming. And the way most of us handle it is to just add it on top of everything else that we're already doing. That's exactly what creates attention residue. You're not actually dropping the first thing, you're just trying to do both. The first step here is to pause before responding. Not every request needs an immediate answer. That half-second pause before you say yes, before you jump in, is where you get to decide whether this new thing is worth the cost of making that switch. Most people skip this step entirely. They react and then they wonder why they feel exhausted by noon. The second step is to decide what gets replaced. If something new is coming into your day, something else has to come out. You don't have extra capacity sitting around. Your time is already allocated to other things. So when a new thing comes up, you have to ask which existing thing is getting bumped. Maybe the new thing is more important and it replaces something on your priority list today. Maybe it's not and it can wait, so you schedule it. But you can't just add it without replacing something else. So the third step here is to be willing to say no. This is the part most of us skip. Sometimes the right trade-off isn't replacing one task with another. It's recognizing that the new thing doesn't belong in your day at all. Not every request deserves your time and attention. Not every email needs a response today. If something comes in and the honest answer is that nothing on your list should get bumped for it, then the answer is no, or not now, or maybe later. That's a trade-off too, and it's often the one that makes the biggest difference. Now, I know saying no is easier said than done, especially at work or with people you don't want to upset. If that's the part you get stuck on, I made a whole separate video on how to say no politely and professionally in those kinds of situations. You can see a link to that one here. And then we get to close, which is the step most people never do, and it's the one that changes the most. Close is what you do at the end of your workday. And the reason it matters so much is everything we just talked about earlier with the Zeigarnik effect and attention residue. Your brain holds on to unfinished work. If you just stop working at 5 o'clock without closing anything out, those open loops are on your mind at dinner and when you're spending time with your family, and they even interrupt your sleep. The first step is to review unfinished tasks before you shut your laptop. Look at what's still open, what didn't get finished today, what's waiting on somebody else, what's going to need your attention tomorrow. You're not trying to finish everything, you're just taking an inventory. And then the second step is to define next steps and assign them times. This is the piece that actually does the work. For each unfinished thing, write down what the next step is and when you're going to do it. Get really specific. Write something like, finish the report draft Wednesday morning at 9. This is based directly on the research from Sophie Leroy and her colleague Teresa Glom. They found that when people take a minute to write down where they left off and what they planned to do next, attention residue drops significantly and performance on the next task improves. You're basically handing your brain a receipt that says, this is handled, you can let it go. And the third step is to make a plan before you leave. Once you've captured everything that's open, take 2 more minutes to sketch out what tomorrow looks like. What are tomorrow's priorities? What's the first thing that you're going to work on? This is how you start tomorrow's clear tonight, so that when you sit down in the morning, your brain already knows where to go. When you do close well, you start being able to actually be done with work at the end of your workday. Your evenings get more relaxing, your sleep better, because your brain finally got permission to stop running those background processes. You don't have to do this perfectly to feel the difference. You don't need a complicated system or a 2-hour morning routine. The reason this works is because it's targeting the specific thing that's been draining your attention. Unfinished loops your brain can't let go of. The moment you start closing those loops, even a little, your brain has more to work with. So tomorrow, just give it a try. It doesn't have to take a long time, just a few minutes. Use clear in the morning, cut when something comes up, and close before you leave for the day. Try just one day and see what happens. Your attention is spread across too many things you haven't closed yet. Close them and your focus will come back. And once you've got your focus back, the next problem most people run into is actually starting the important work, the kind of work that keeps getting pushed to tomorrow, even when you have the time to do it. If that sounds familiar, I made a whole video on why that happens and how to fix it. You can watch that right here. I'm Amelia Delphonse, and it's time to master your week.